Hello and welcome to the Monster Mechanics Podcast, where we take creatures of myth and media and see how they can be improved. I am your host, Scott Paladin, and with me as always is the parsley, sage, and rosemary to my thyme, Zach Jaquays. What are we talking about today, Zach?
This week we're talking about the Fylgjia.
Yes, so the Fylgjia. Fylgjia are a Norse myth. We don't have just a ton of information about them. At least when I say this, the information we do have on them has some fairly large error bars on it. So there's a bunch of different contradicting ideas here, but the general idea is that the word Fylgjia originally comes from a word that means to accompany. And the idea is that it is an animal creature that is strongly associated with a certain person, follows them throughout their life. It also is the same word that they used for afterbirth or placenta. And the Fylgjia legend is kind of deeply connected to the idea of placentas and afterbirth. Mm-hmm. Lots of people seems to think that if an animal ate the afterbirth of a particular person, that they would become linked. Mm-hmm. Or that literally the afterbirth came alive and then became an animal and followed you throughout your life. It's a little bit weird.
Yeah, that's gross. Like some sort of weird childbirth related Pokemon.
Yeah. But metal as heck, I will give it that. So it shares some features with, the idea of totem animals or spirit animals that we see in other belief systems. So the idea that what kind of creature is your Fylgjia sort of reflects something on you. If you are a wily, cunning person, they would expect you to have a fox Fylgjia. If you are a strong warrior or something like that, then they might expect something like a bear. Or if you're a leader, something like an eagle. There's that same sort of tea leaves reading into who you are based on what your Fylgjia was. They also have a strong association with, they're sort of a psychopomp light in this situation. They're an omen creature for lots of people are expected to see their own Fylgjia right before their death, or for someone else to see their Fylgjia right before their death. They can be a portent in that way.
So the Fylgjia, are they typically just not seen all the time? I was kind of picturing this thing sort of just tags along with you at all times kind of thing.
Yes, this is a contradictory kind of idea. There are different camps with different versions. It's all kind of a mishmash, as lots of big error bars on anything you hear from Norse mythology. Accurate information that we have very little of from primary sources, things like the sagas. And then there's this huge selection of things that people have kind of just made up about Norse mythology. And that people are just sort of trying to retroactively reconstruct it and create ideas. And so the Fylgjia is one of those ideas that we have a little bit of good information on, and then a lot of people are just sort of tacking on top of that as well. So it's perfectly acceptable to me that this be all kind of contradictory, mismashy kind of, we can pull whatever we want from. That'll be great.
Yeah, sure.
So we're gonna stick with this placental thing because I think it's the neatest twist on the idea of the spirit animal that I've seen. Yeah. I particularly like the idea that it is, I don't know, I could go either way, but I particularly like the idea that it is the placenta that comes up. It just turns into an animal and follows you around for the rest of your life. That is exactly my kind of weird. There is also some interesting aspects you could do if it was, the animal that eats the afterbirth becomes connected to you, means that could be exploited in a way. You could specifically get yourself an eagle and feed it the placenta in order to have your child have this as their Fylgjia. But I think I'm more on the idea of the placenta coming alive and becoming your Fylgjia, your follower. It's weird.
It's weird, and it's an interesting twist. There's some cultures where eating the placental afterbirth and whatnot is a ritual, and I'm wondering if that's viewed as completely destructive.
Yeah. So, what if this is one of those things where, if in the world that we're talking about, if this is a true thing, that's in the world, that different cultures treat them differently, where in one culture you're expected to let the Fylgjia develop on its own and become the creature that it's meant to be. And then maybe in another part of the world, again, eating it, preparing it in a ritual way, and then either a close relative or maybe the whole community like partakes or something like that. Like instead that builds a communal connection, like an actual like superpower style connection between them. Like,
oh, that's cool.
The ability to like, because it connects you, like for example, if you eat the placenta of the person at their birth, then you can always hear their words when they want you to hear them. Like it can't go the other way, but like you could always, like they could talk and you could hear it at any time. And so a community that does this over time is going to have like not exactly a hive mind, but like this ability to communicate with one another that is really interesting. Whereas another community that instead lets the placenta develop into a Fylgja, instead they're all going to have Pokemon, basically. They're all going to have their animals that are their own like close personal friends and servants, like familiars and stuff. And so you have these competing ideas.
Yeah, this is an interesting twist on the magic of childbirth.
Hey man, proper magic should be gross, okay? Like easy magic is not interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm down with the idea of these creatures being reflective of your personality.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if I was going to push it in a direction, I would say that maybe like the exact, like what the animal develops into is always going to be sort of a version of that creature that is like different in some way. Like anytime you'd see a Fylgja, a fox that was a Fylgja, you'd be able to go, that's not a normal fox. Like it's going to be bigger, or it's going to have extra features or something magical about it. Sort of honestly, like kind of Pokemon-ish. Like,
yeah,
you look at it, you're like, that is obviously a magical creature. And also specifically, that creature doesn't look like any other Fylgja I've seen. Like it looks fox-like. It looks like it should be a fox, but I can recognize that as Zach's Fylgja because, you know, it's got the blue tinted ears and the, glowing eyes or something like that. Like it develops things that reflect you, the person whose follower they are, in very specific ways. Like it'll show like a fox, but it'll also get new things tacked onto it and like further reflecting who you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really cool idea. Kind of touches on like that sort of Harry Potter Patronus kind of thing.
Yeah. More specifically, it's his dark materials a little bit, where you've got the what do they call them, daemons there, where it's like there's an extra part of you that just like is another creature all the time, that just like hangs around and like can change forms until it settles into a certain one. Except this one starts. I like the idea that the development of it takes a long time. Like children take forever to grow up, and so the Fylgja you also have to like care for, and like I don't know what gross things you have to do to keep it alive, but like it grows over time and then like slowly becomes the thing that it ends up being. Maybe a little bit faster than a human, but like not that like not like a week. It takes years.
So kind of playing on that idea of like the placenta being this creature, what happens in like the case of like twins?
I think
like, do they share a Fylgja?
No, well it depends. If you are fraternal twins, then you'll each have your own afterbirth. If you are identical twins, then I believe you will have a single one.
Interesting.
And so, okay, the way I'd like to go, let's back up, and I want to establish another superpower for yourself and your Fylgja, which is that in this world, you can always see out of your Fylgja's eyes.
Okay.
Just like this is the same sort of like psychic connection that happens in the other community when they like eat the afterbirth. They develop a connection with one another. In this version, that manifests as you can perceive the things that your Fylgja perceives. And then in the identical twin version, where you've got two people and one Fylgja, that is shared between all three of them.
Okay.
Like it establishes a link between all three people, or the two people and the Fylgja itself all are connected and can like perceive what the other ones perceive and stuff. And so it makes a very like twins are a very weird thing in this world because like you could use them as a long distance communication system. Like you could like put one twin in one camp and another twin in another camp and literally just have them like you could talk into one's eyes and he could repeat the word they would work as a telephone system.
This entangled pair of twins.
Yeah. And you could that's awesome. This could be one of those things if we want to go full Pokemon also that like over time you can like develop your Fylgja and yourself into becoming like a warrior pair Like imagine a dude riding on the back of a bear and like the two of them are like perfectly in sync with one another, except it's not just a bear. It's like a bear covered with flames or something. Like it's a bear that, is bigger and stronger than normal bear. And like maybe it can carry its own swords and stuff. I don't know. Like you can go however far you want to push that idea. You could totally make it super metal and awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's talk mortality and the Fylgjia. Is this thing able to die like before it's bonded person?
There's good options on both sides. Mm-hmm. I kind of love when a magical system can be exploited in unexpected ways. And so the idea that you could have a Fylgjia that can't die means that you could do things with it. You could be more reckless with it and like have it do things that would be dangerous for a human to do, as long as it's willing to do it, or as long as you have enough control over it to do it.
I mean, like just talking about like having like riding that bear into battle, like if you know you have to deal with an enemy that has an immortal bear monster that wields swords, like that's going to have an impact on society.
The other option though is of course like if maybe it's one of like if it dies then you die is another sort of interesting thing that could be exploited or played with. I kind of like actually I want to go the immortal Fylgjia route, except they're not impervious. They'll like regenerate. So it's like they're all Wolverines, right?
Okay.
And it'll take time. Like if you cut off a Fylgja's arm, it'll get its arm back eventually, but it's going to be down and not useful for a long, long time afterwards. And so maybe in this world, especially between the multiple tribes that develop these Fylgjas as opposed to using the afterbirth in another way, between those tribes, their version of war is that none of the human warriors go into battle. They form ranks and like the Fylgjia all charge. You have this giant battle between all of these huge animals with extra abilities. And then whichever side wins knocks out all of the Fylgjia, and the side that has lost their Fylgjia go, okay, we surrender, like,
okay, you have beaten me. Here's 600 gold. I'm going to the nearest Pokemon Center to revive my Pokemon.
Yeah, that's what I was leaning into. Absolutely. But the idea is like it replaces that. God, we really are just making Pokemon, aren't we? It leans into that sort of proxy battle thing where like this would also be a perfect idea for trial by combat as well, where like instead of trying to determine things by juries or deliberations of fact or whatever, you just challenge somebody to a Fylgjia duel and you can have your bear beat their parrot or whatever, and then like you get your way. And that's a very medievally concept there that I think would be good for this setting.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a cool idea where whoever's Fylgjia is stronger is obviously in the right.
And of course, this like leads to the inevitable hero's journey. Young kid whose Fylgjia develops into a 18-foot long lion or something like that, who's obviously the chosen one or something. Like you can like you could lead this down the very formulaic route of like,
this kid doesn't have a Fylgjia.
Oh God. Seems like that wouldn't be a superpower in this one, but
well, clearly he's the chosen one and his is actually super special.
He's just got to find it. Yeah, they were separated at birth, I guess. Yeah, that could be, you can go that route.
I mean, that's basically the premise of Codex Alera.
Oh yeah, that's right. I need to finish those books. I only got through the first one.
I like the idea of them being immortal and having to sort of be regenerated. I like the idea that maybe there's a ritual or process that involves a sacrifice of yourself. So maybe you have to be a little precious.
Yeah. Okay.
With these
so you can't just throw them away.
Yeah.
Okay. When it's not, if your Fylgjia can't die, like it can't be killed, but if it is severely wounded and you are having to like really regenerate it, then you have to undergo a ritual in which it makes you very sick and like incredibly fatigued. It like gives you like like it makes you feel like you're about to die, but not actually. You don't end up dying, but it makes you feel like you're going to die. Like it's so bad, especially like depending on how bad your Fylgjia is off. And you have to spend that time. You are in that state for the entire time that your Fylgjia is regenerating, right? So like, and that allows you for varying degrees too, for like, he's just got some wounds. Okay, I'll spend the day in bed reading or something like that, and the Fylgja gets back on its feet. Or like your Fylgja has been chopped into tiny little pieces and you have to spend an entire year, feeling like you're about to die in order to get it back.
Oh gosh, yeah. I also like the idea, maybe there's like a shared lifespan between you and your Fylgja.
Oh yeah.
And you're both borrowing from the same
okay.
life essence or pool or just years that you have together. And like if you're mortally wounded, like you borrow a big chunk of that, and both you and your Fylgja now have shortened lifespans.
Yeah.
But you don't necessarily die from that wound because you have this connection to this Fylgja.
Yeah. I also like the idea that they're physical, but they're not exactly the same sort of flesh and bone as everybody else, like humans. Like they start off that way, but over time they get more and more ephemeral and like spiritual, like they start to develop features that are less and less normal. And so like you'll get ones that start to turn a little bit transparent or start to glow with ethereal light or become, like they look like they're made of stars or something like that. Like the older you get and the closer to your death you get, the weirder they are, the more like a spirit they are. And then what happens when you die in this world is that your soul and the Fylgja both go on to the, like maybe that's when they rejoin. Like your soul becomes part of the Fylgja, and the Fylgja goes on to the next life. The place that like all of this world is a preparation for the Fylgja to go on.
Interesting. So something that my mind kind of latched onto is like this thing sort of over the course of your lifetime changing.
Yeah.
So it's basically like a physical representation of where you're at in life. When you're born, like it's the afterbirth.
Mm-hmm. You're just an amorphous goo at the beginning of your life, right? So that's what that is.
So many cultures and mythologies have like your life kind of portrayed as like a thread.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like in this case, like instead of being like a thread that can be cut or whatever, like your progression through life is sort of the physical manifestation of this Fylgja.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so maybe there's like all kinds of superstition about like omens of death and whatnot surrounding like how this thing looks compared to like how you are in your life, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think people don't stay the same. Like there isn't this is my own personal beliefs, but I don't believe that people have like an innate core to them. Like they're built a little bit by biology, but a lot by their surroundings. Mm-hmm. And so, and you don't stay the same the whole way of your life. Like the guy I was 5 years ago is different than the person I am now. And the person I was, like 20 years ago isn't even recognizable anymore. Like like me and the 17-year-old me wouldn't get along at all. And so the idea that your Fylgja isn't just some version, like it's not just some version of yourself, like your innermost core. It's a reflection of the person you are now, and over time they change and warp. And as you change and warp, if you moved to a new country and like got a new job and like met some new people and like your interests change and you become a kinder person as you figure out your stuff, or maybe something bad happens to you and you become angry in response, your Fylgja morphs for all of those things and changes with you and like never really settles its form until you die. That's the point at which it is done, and it moves on from this world in that final form.
That's kind of interesting. I like the idea that that would have a direct influence on the culture because you're seeing like this absolute change in everybody around you.
Yeah.
And so like maybe like the warning signs about a person, feeling isolated or whatnot are the changes in their Fylgja. And so because of that, like a culture is more tight-knit because like they can identify these changes in people as they happen.
Yeah, and you can respond to the changes in other people's Fylgja yourself. You can use that as a judgment on them, and it kind of removes a layer of duplicity. Like you really can look at somebody and see sort of the nature of their soul by looking at their Fylgja and go, oh yeah, that thing has big sharp teeth all the time and is growling at me. I think he's probably an angry dude, even though he's being quite nice to me right now. That could be very cool. Yeah, I like that a lot. And then the idea that I love the idea that everybody, well, not everybody, but most people in this world think that the Fylgja is a manifestation of them, but that if you reverse the perspective a little bit, what you realize is that you're a physical manifestation of this thing that will carry on without you. Like Like maybe we are the humans are sort of the ones who go before and test things out in order to help this creature along its journey. Like it is called the follower. We are the guides, in order to take it along its path, and that it's the more important part of it, because when we die, this thing goes on to the afterlife.
That's a really cool idea.
Yeah. I like that version of and like, if I was writing this as a story, I would leave that sort of vague exactly what that afterlife is like. Like the more you define it, the less interesting it is to me.
Sure.
But that it is very clear that is what happens. There's something going on. Like that thing is off to do something, and it's not going to go rest. It's not going to go like it starts to, like something about it. It has a task to do or something like that. There's something for the Fylgja to do once the human has moved on.
Interesting.
I don't know what that would be, but in fact, if I was writing it, I would be very careful not to define exactly what that was, but that everybody sort of knows that that's the case, or that, that's the theory, that like this thing is for a purpose, and the purpose isn't here really.
So we've always talked about like the Fylgja being like a reflection of the person. Is there any interaction between like the person and the Fylgja? Like is the Fylgja influencing the person at all?
I mean, you could have it go both ways, or I mean, literally, you could have it go both ways at the same time. Like they really are like the same creature in two bodies, basically. Where like they are, like if you do something to the Fylgja, it affects the person. If the person also affects the Fylgja, you could go literally have it sort of be transmissive back and forth, or maybe it's unclear. Like it's one of those things where you have such a hard time separating cause and effect, that like you're not really sure. Like these two things are highly, highly correlated. You can't figure out which one's causing the other. Maybe this guy became angry because his Fylgja changed, or maybe the Fylgja changed because he became angry. It would be very, very difficult to suss out which one would be which would be true.
Okay, yeah. I love the idea of like that kind of split soul.
Yeah,
that you're talking about. I think that's a really interesting idea, especially like with them being split. Like this part basically goes to heaven, and this part is discarded.
Yeah,
but is ultimately a huge influence on the important part, quote unquote.
Yeah. Where like the human is a tool that that is used to make the Fylgja what it is, to move on to the next thing. Okay, backing up, what implication does that idea have on the society that like ritually consumes the afterbirth, and like they're literally taking bits of the other person's souls into themselves? And maybe those don't pass on the same way. Maybe they have disrupted that cycle and kept that energy within their community.
Interesting.
I don't know what that does exactly, but like that's got to have a profound effect on how those people interact with the afterlife. If they do at all, maybe they have sort of foregone the idea. Like maybe these people think like, you guys got it wrong. Like you are wasting all of this energy, which is going to go off and, do something else when you're dead. Whereas we have like taken that into ourselves, and it remains within us over the course of our lives, and like is going to be a continuous part of our community, because we can make use of it, even though we're not allowing our Fylgjas to go off into the next life and do whatever it is they're meant to do there, but we are instead using that energy here to improve our lives now.
Yeah, they're built like we talked before, like their community bond is 100% the most important part to them.
And maybe it's one of those things where like we were talking about, you have to sacrifice in order to repair your Fylgja if they become damaged. Well, that kind of could work in reverse for the community. Old people who ritually consume the afterbirth, like regain some life energy from that. Like they are literally taking in that energy that would have been developed into a Fylgja, and it's extending their life. It's making them healthier. And so like the members of that community may live longer and have, longer lives that are less full of disease, and certainly aren't going to be shortened prematurely by, like having to sacrifice years to keep their Fylgja running. And they have a longer, easier time in this world, but they do not get to pass on to the next.
It might be interesting, like, if now they have, like, I had mentioned kind of before, talking about, like, sort of like a shared lifespan kind of thing, but, like, if that's split, like, between the community as a whole, like, maybe like at some point something happens and the entire community just dies as one.
Yeah. Like either that energy becomes disrupted or like enough of them are killed at a single time that like there just isn't enough energy to go around, and the rest of them sort of, they had all been like, between them had always been this like shared swirling pool of life energies, you know, where maybe even to the point where like if one of them becomes injured, everybody else feels the flu for a day, but this one person, like their hand grows back in the same day. Like it can manifest as a superpower really. But then like they go to battle with the people who have Fylgjas, and the Fylgja people just ravage them, like kill off a huge chunk of them all at once because they're using immortal, like undamageable creatures, and they can be much. They have a bear that breathes fire and has swords, you know, so like way more martially capable or something like that. And then this community of people who like we're all sharing that energy. If enough of them get killed, there just isn't enough to go around anymore, and all of those cycles get broken, and they all just die off. That would be very cool. They've all like put in their lot together, and then they must succeed or not as a cult, as a single community.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool idea. I love the idea that like this community would be so insular. And
they'd be hugely mistrusted by all the Fylgja people too, because like. Not only are they weird and just like they throw away what they think, they kill and consume what the Fylgja people think is a soul, but also I can't know anything about you because I can't see your essence the way I can with all of my other companions. And so like I have no idea. You could lie to me and I wouldn't be able to verify it, and therefore I cannot trust you at all. Like there would be this huge division between the two of them.
I wonder if there's any other ways to like run with this or use with this. We've got like the Pokemon version, and we've got the communal version. But what other ways would this be potentially used? Or
so if left to its own devices, or like maybe fed, taken care of, I guess like you nurture it, it becomes its own creature. If the community consumes it, then it becomes like it brings that person into sort of a shared experience and brings them into like I said, a swirling life energy of this huge community. Maybe there's a group of people who like, I don't know exactly how you would do this, but maybe like you like feed it to the child itself, like you merge the two entities into a single one. So these they're all still individuals, but they are not split between two bodies like the way the Fylgja people do. They are both the one who guides and the one who follows. And maybe those people are like, maybe they are like a Fylgja themselves. They are like their own system. Instead of having a separate body, they change and develop physically over time the same way the Fylgja do, you know? Like they take on animalistic features, or they take on spirit features, you know, where they grow horns or wings or claws, you know, depending on their nature.
Could also be something with maybe it's just kept like strictly within the family, so that you have like
a clan,
like lineages and clans that are all close knit. But
so I like that idea, paired with the idea that that community, those clans, have all figured out how you raise kids in a way that they turn out a certain way. So like, you know, you keep everything within the clan, and like, because it's concentrated in that way, they take on some of the changes, and you get these like people who like actually become bigger, or actually gain, like I said, like maybe horns or claws or something like that. They gain superpowers based off of the shared ideals of that community. Like they are all supposed to be warriors, and so they gain warrior features.
Or maybe maybe there's sort of like this idea of like going with the like maybe like the matrilineal side of things, where, you know, we've always consumed it, but like maybe like the most recent one is always allowed to keep their Fylgja up until like they give birth to their children or whatever.
Okay.
And so it's sort of like a progressive system of like just making this one Fylgja for your like representative of your family.
Interesting. Okay.
So I don't know what they do with the previous Fylgja, if it becomes sacrificed at some point,
or
like when
maybe they feed the new afterbirth to the previous Fylgja.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
And therefore that Fylgja becomes a single Fylgja for the whole community, and becomes like, it grows bigger, and like it's got that shared connection with everybody. And so therefore like becomes their local god. You know, instead of having everybody have their own little Fylgja, they've got this one that is developing over time. And because you're constantly renewing it with the life forces of new children, it stays. It never moves on to the next world.
Yeah.
Cool.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's a cool idea.
Yeah, yeah. And you could have this like community who all are protected by a single giant monster, you know, with like the old gods of the Princess Mononoke. You know, you've got these like these huge animals that like have, you know, godlike features and stuff, and have huge access to huge amounts of power themselves, but they don't serve any one particular individual more than the others.
Mm-hmm.
That rocks. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
You could, I mean, you could really, depending on how you treat this power, this life force, because that's what we've sort of said, is that like this afterbirth is like is a font of power in a way, and it's how you treat that power. You could go, I mean, you could probably go various different ways with it. Like, there's probably somebody out there who's learned how to corrupt it, and like you take the afterbirth and you like biocraft it, like you can like make a weapon out of it, and like you have a living sword that like has superpowers. That'd be really cool. Or like a suit of armor or something like that made from the.
Yeah, like what we've done is less make a monster and more make a magic system.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, like that's spoiler alert for everybody listening. That's we've done that before. Like sometimes we start with a single animal and then like go off into just weird ass crap. Just honestly great. That's what I like.
Yeah, but I love the idea. Like, you know, we talk about like weapons and armor, but like if like a society was focused more on construction or something, like
like everybody like crafts this thing into a single brick that goes into their central temple or something like that. And over time it grows and changes and becomes this sort of fantastic place that doesn't follow normal physical laws.
Yeah. If they've like constructed a temple or a community center, like of these Fylgjia, and like now this center is reflective of the community around it. That's a really cool idea.
Yeah. That rocks. You can go different directions with here. I like the ones that we've created, but there's endless possibilities. This is awesome. Well, I think we've got a pretty good establishment here. I'm not going to give myself too much to edit this time, so we're keeping it a little shorter. But I
apologize for all the dog noise on this end. But
that's fine. There's dog noises are a plus as far as I'm concerned. All right. Well, we'll catch you guys later. Bye.
All right. Till next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Monster Mechanics. Monster Mechanics is produced and edited by me, Scott Paladin, and hosted by myself and my best friend, Zach Jaquays. All of the ideas generated during this podcast are released under a do what the f*** you want public license.